We sure appreciate everyone being here this morning. My name is Bob Hope, and I appreciate you. I've been in contact with many of you, so sure do appreciate you being with us here at Brentwood for our chosen generation. We're thankful that you're able to be with us, and we hope that our time together will be a blessing for you. Our theme is taken in this two-day event is the chosen generation, and we've gotten that from 1 Peter, the 2nd chapter, verse 9, which says, "But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession." Now think about that. God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light. Now this is our very first year that we're doing this. There was a lot of groundwork to be laid, and I think we did a great job as far as 6 weeks in preparation for this. We'll be selecting some dates for 2024, and we'll give more than adequate time for next year to plan, and we hope it to be even bigger. But we appreciate you being here so very much. The lessons chosen are based on establishing genuine friendships and trusting relationships. And that's so very important for each one of us, regardless how old you are. It's the people and the circle of friends that we have and that we maintain day by day. It's so important who we associate with. It determines in many cases the direction of our life. And that's why it's so important. Our speakers for our two-day event, Keith Stonehart and Bobby Blackburn, we're really excited that they've taken the time to come and spend time today with us. And I've seen the context of their lessons, and it's going to be incredible. They have dedicated their lives and motivated many young people in establishing a sound and wholesome relationships of our circle of friends. Also, special thanks for all the people, the members who have given their time to help us in all of this, in the arrangement of so many different things. Lunch that we have prepared across the street at the Academy and at my house at the end of today's service. But here's a personal challenge that I would like to challenge each one of you with. A personal challenge. Being real. Being yourself is the greatest filter you'll ever use. It instantly filters out all the people that don't belong with you. And at the same time, it reveals those who do. Our song leader is going to be Eric Nash and Tim Matheny. Our first lesson will be Bobby Blackburn, and his lesson topic is establishing genuine friendships. And before we begin and have our first two songs, let's pray. Our Father in heaven, we gather here today under your care and your protection. Thank you for your loving kindness that never fails us. We thank you for those with us today that have come and gathered. And we ask that you guide our thoughts and our actions that we might bring you the glory. Strengthen us and fill us with your peace. Fill our hearts with your love. And fill our words and conversation with truth and grace. Be with our speakers and give them the ability to share the words of boldness, enthusiasm, and compassion. And we ask all of this in your Son's name. Amen. Eric?
All right. First song is going to be Outstanding All, so I'd ask you to stand. We're going to sing the chorus twice, and I don't know if this was by design with the capital chorus to go into the center, but this is really good. What you guys are doing. We'll sing the chorus 2 times. cup. You are beautiful beyond description, too marvelous for words, too wonderful for comprehension, like nothing ever seen or heard. Who can grasp your infinite wisdom? Who can fathom the depth of your love? You are beautiful beyond description, majesty enthroned above. And I stand in awe of you. I stand in awe of you. Holy God, to whom all praise is due. I stand in awe of you. And I stand in awe of you. I stand in awe of you. Holy God, to whom all praise is due. I stand in awe of you. Please be seated. In thinking about Bobby's upcoming lesson, this is an old song that they revised as far as the tenor and bass part, but it's "What a Friend We Have in Jesus." Notice the bass and the tenor. What a friend we have in Jesus, all our sins and griefs to bear. What a privilege to carry everything to God in prayer. Oh, what needs we often forfeit. Oh, what needless thing we bear. All because we do not carry everything to God in prayer. Have we trials and temptations? Is there trouble anywhere? We should never be discouraged. Take it to the Lord in prayer. Can we find a friend so faithful, who will all our sorrows share? Jesus knows our every weakness. Take it to the Lord in prayer. Are we weak and heavy laden, with comfort, with the load of care? Precious Savior, still our refuge. Take it to the Lord in prayer. Do your friends despise forsake you? Take it to the Lord in prayer. In His arms He'll take and shield you. You will find a soul
All right, am I on? Can you hear me good? All right, good. Guys, thanks for coming. There's a lot of different things you could be doing right now, And it's really meaningful that you guys took the time. So these guys walked from Franklin, Kentucky, all the way down. One guy's here from Virginia, which he had to start walking a couple days ago to get here, and he actually went to Coleman first and picked up some folks. That's pretty cool. I'm glad you guys are here, though, and I hope in the next 30, 45 minutes or so, is the trap door is at, what, 11:45 or 11:30? 11:45. All right, so we're going to go through. Here's what I'm going to encourage you to do. At least your time with me. Keith is usually pretty similar, but I don't want to assume that he's going to do something different. I would really appreciate it if you guys would be interactive with me. So if there's something that I say that moves you and you want to comment on it, raise your hand and let's speak to that. This is, as much as I can make it, I want it to be about you and some life choices that you're going to have to make, especially when it comes to talking about some genuine friendships. How many of you guys find it easy to make friends? Yeah? I do. I'm an extrovert. I mean, it's easy for me to go out. I don't meet a stranger. Hey, let's go do something. I don't have to be with somebody very long before I'm like, hey, let's go, whatever. And sometimes that's a blessing and sometimes it's a curse because you can get involved with people that aren't going to make great decisions. And so that's been helpful. Sometimes it's been hurtful. There's other times where I'll ask that question, how many of you make friends easy? And it tends to be kind of an introverted thing where, like I like people and I don't mind being around them as long as they're kind of over there, right? I mean, I don't have a long list of friends. I got a couple and I'm good with that, right? How many of you can identify maybe more with that? Yeah? That's okay. That's okay. Having the quantity of friends isn't necessarily the goal. I know that it feels that way when you're on social media, that we've got to have so many people that like us. We got to have so many people that approve of whatever it is that we're putting up. And then sometimes you've always got that person that wants to come in and say, well, actually, and then they want to fight against you for whatever reason. That's not really what friendship is about. That's not what likes are about, that sort of thing. And what I'm going to talk to you about, I was talking with some of the folks that were here a little early. My topic today about establishing genuine friendships is really a process that I've done a couple of times in life, but I really didn't have a great way to illustrate it until recently. And recently, in probably the last year, I've been going through this process of just filtering my relationships. And I think it's healthy for you to go through that a couple of times in your life. So don't let it bother you if there are moments in your life where you go, you know what, I probably need to do a check. There will be people that are your friends now that for whatever reason may not be your friend later or may not be as close later. And that's okay. And there's going to be times where you're going to have someone else that's going to come in and you're going to, man, I never have been as close to this person as I was to, I'm closer now than I was to anybody else. And that's okay. But establishing that genuine friendship, establishing that real heartfelt, not superficial, that we can get and talk about not just the weather and not just our sports teams and not just what's going on at school, but that we can get down to a level where I'm going to share with you what's going on with me. And you can share what's going on with you. And in a very real way, we can be critical and healing in those moments. That's what a genuine relationship is. And I'm going to say this, that's what really all of us want, but all of us are afraid of. Because that means that we have to be vulnerable, doesn't it? And we're afraid of that vulnerability for a variety of reasons. It may be that you've never had that sort of relationship before, or it may be that you have and you've been stabbed while you were being vulnerable with somebody, okay? I want to say this to you. If that hasn't happened to you, it probably will. I wish I could tell you that that will never happen, but it probably will. And you need to know, because of what genuine relationships are, when someone is, like the Bible says, faithful are the wounds of a friend, when they're wounding you for a good reason, and when someone's stabbing you. Now, they're going to very often feel similar because it's still a cut. But there are times where someone who's genuine with you will say, you need to stop this, or you need to add that. And all I'm going to talk to you about today is going to help you try and filter those things out. I've only got 45 minutes. I wish I could talk about those things forever, but the fact of the matter is, what we're going to do is just kind of put snacks in a bag, and it'll be something that you'll reflect on over life, because unfortunately, you're going to have to go through those things to find them. Okay? You're going to have to go through those things to find them. So, the illustration that's helped me lately is a book that I read by Ivan Meisner called Who's in Your Room? Okay? Now, it sounds like it would be a murder book, right? Who's in your room? But it's actually a metaphor that talks about who you're letting get close to you. So I want to imagine a room. Everybody this is the pretend session that we're going to go through, okay? Imagine that you, starting today, have to live in a room, and it can be as big or as small as you ever want it to be, okay? Some of you may want a really big space. Some of you want a very small space. It's fully customizable so long as it remains one room. Do you understand that? So you can customize it. There may be a little bit of a partition, right? Maybe a cubicle wall type of thing. But once you establish it to, put a whole wall up that's no longer a room, now it's becoming a house. It has to remain one room. Okay? But it can be any color you want it to be. It can have snacks in it if you want it to have snacks in it, right? Whatever you like, it's your room. It has unlimited capacity to grow to keep as many people in there as you'd like to have in this room. So those of you that are extroverts like me are going, woohoo, we're going to have a party. All the people will be in this room, right? And I'll be walking around talking with everybody that's going to be in this room. And those of you that are introverts that are going, no. This is going to be a very small room. It's going to have a little couch. I'm going to have my books, and nobody's coming in. Okay? And it's going to be something in between that for most of us. Okay? Here's the deal. There's only one entrance to this room, and there are no exits. Okay? So once someone comes in, they don't go out. Does that change the dynamic of your room a little bit? Okay? Kelly, you're nodding your head. Why are you nodding your head?
There's some people that I can only tolerate.
That's right. Right? Yeah, I had that. I remember in high school there was, I want to talk to this girl, and she was like, I like you, but I don't like you like you. Right? I love you with a special kind of love that disappears when you're not with me. Yeah. So I get that. Why else is that? Anybody else with Caleb? Like, there's some people I like, but I can only be around them for so long. Yeah. So those people don't get to come in the room. Or they do, but then you don't get to kick them out. How do you feel about that? How does it feel if you say to somebody, you can't come in my room? You can answer that. Because there's some people you're going to go, I don't have to deal with this person anymore. It makes your room a safe place. But if you let them in, now they're always in the room. And the room is never safe, is it? Because there's always the possibility that person that you don't want to be around is there. So there's no exits. That was hard for me to get there. So to think that through, what Meisner talks about in his book, Who's in Your Room, is what would be good for you is to have a bouncer. And the reason he chose bouncer is because if you say doorman, then some people will say, well, what if it's a door woman? Then you got to go door person, and that sounds silly. So we use bouncer. Okay? But the bouncer is someone who stands at the door, right? Kind of looks like Keith. He's crossing his arms, right? And he's like, not everybody gets in. Let's talk about the bouncer for just a little bit. What's the bouncer's job? The bouncer stands at the door and he's like, okay, some people don't get in. Right? We were talking about this morning, me and Ariel were talking about, how we dress to go to certain places. And there's certain places that you go that if you don't have on a nice outfit, right, they don't let you in. There's some restaurants in Nashville, you don't have a jacket, gentlemen, you don't get in. Don't try and walk in here in some blue jeans because you're not getting in. Right? We have a certain standard. We're not letting those folks in. Now, if you want to wear blue jeans or you want to not wear a jacket, there's plenty of other places you can go. But in this restaurant, you're not doing that. So we keep some people out. But the other thing is, it does let some people in. How many of you have seen maybe on a movie where there's a long line of people and the bouncer will go, "You two people back there, come on." Right? Or how many of you have ever been somewhere where there's been a long line of folks maybe and you're going to get tacos and then you got a friend up at the front and they're like, "Hey, come up here and stand with me." Right? Anybody ever had that happen? If you haven't had that happen, you need better friends, okay? Because like tacos are just too good. So it lets some people in, all right? These people stay out, these people stay in. And then some people, you just have to wait. We go back to that line. It's not time for you to be in here yet. There'll be a moment where you need to be in this space. There's a moment where I'm going to let you in. But right now, for whatever reason, maybe the room is at capacity, right? Maybe the ready. Maybe we don't have enough space. Lately, it's been that you go to a restaurant and you get in in the waiting list and they won't let you in. Not because there aren't tables. We went to Cheesecake Factory a couple weeks ago. There were tables all over the place, but they couldn't serve people because they were short-staffed that night. How many of you have had that happen? Yeah, you want to talk about, I'm hungry already. But they can't let you in because they don't have the capacity. So it's not necessarily that it's on them, it's on the capacity of the room, right? Or the people that are going to be in the room. How many of you can kind of see where I'm starting to go today? Right? You see the metaphor? When you begin to start thinking in these terms about what genuine relationships are, then you begin to think, okay, what is the metaphor of my room? What does that stand for? You guys are going to have to start talking to me or it's going to be pretty quiet. It's life, okay? What else? Your social network. What else? Go ahead. Oh, Keith moved. I thought he was raising his hand. Yeah. Your spiritual circle. Your heart. Right? That's what that represents. And that's what he's trying to get. Now, in that particular book, he's talking about networking and how you leverage good relationships to make you sharper, to build business, etc. I want to talk to you today about who gets in. I want you to talk about who's going to get in. And the first person that you have to let into this room is you. Of all the people that you're going to let in, the first person that you have to let into this room is you. So, as everything's getting ready, how do you let yourself into this room? Now, I know some of you are going to say God, but that's not the answer yet. Okay? Because first of all, the metaphor it's a metaphor. It breaks down at some point, okay? But the reason I picked you is because you have to live in that space, and not everybody wants God to live in their space. Amen? That's right. Not everybody wants God in their room. And so you have to make a decision in your life whether or not you want God to come in, because a lot of people try to treat God like, well, he can come in now, but then he can go out later. He can come in for a little while I'm doing this, but then later on when I'm going to do something else, well, God's going to be outside the room. And so what I'm telling you is, at least as I've thought this through, and please feel free to disagree with me. I'd love this conversation. I believe that you have to go into the room first based on your standards, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. You have to decide then whether or not you're going to allow God to be in that room spiritually, emotionally, whether or not you want him in your life. And you need to understand that when you do that, that's a permanent thing. That's not something that you just take flippantly. Either God's a part or he's not. Either you're going to make that commitment or you're not. And I think once you begin to think on those terms about whether or not you're going to let God in, then you can start thinking, okay, well then if I'm making that kind of commitment to God, who else am I making that sort of commitment to? Am I making that commitment to my family? Right? Mom, dad, brothers, sisters. Okay? To my spouse, to my kids. Who gets in? You can talk about friends. And now you begin to see, okay, if I'm making this sort of commitment about them being in my room, right? Where does that go? Boyfriend, girlfriends, etc. So how do you choose? How do you choose? Now, I've wrestled with this metaphor, and some of you guys may be thinking in other places like, well, you know, maybe we could have a different room. And listen, you write your own book and write your own classroom. I know that this metaphor breaks down at some point, okay? But if this were the case, and if you had to make difficult choices, what would be your standard to choose by? What would be some things you'd look for? I want to stop for just a minute and ask you, what would be some things that you would look for in the people that you'd let in your room? Trustworthy. What does it mean to be trustworthy?
Tell you anything, I can do anything, and they'll still love me for who I am and point me in the right direction towards God.
Okay, good. Did you guys hear that in the back? She has a soft voice. Good. Anybody else? That's a good answer. What else? Yes.
Godly,
Okay, godly. What does that mean?
focused on like spiritual things, and maybe not like you have to believe in God, but like the fact that like you care about like ethics and things, and just like in general you try to be a good person.
Okay, okay. Striving after righteousness. Yes, sir. I'm sorry? Loving. What does that mean? And here's what I'm asking. I'm not that I don't know what it means, or I'm not trying to insult you. I just want you to tell us what you're thinking that means, so we get an idea of your room. So loving means what? Okay. Okay. Love you for who you are and not for what you have. All right. What else? I heard something. Dependable. Yeah, that they're dependable. Yes. What does dependable mean? Sure. Okay. What else? A genuine interest? Yeah, a genuine interest. Tell me what that means.
That they're looking at on your behalf, regardless of anything.
Okay.
Emotions, feelings, ideas, popularity.
Okay. Genuinely interested in who you are. What else? Loyalty. What does that mean?
Putting someone like just, I don't know, respecting someone enough to live their lives before yours possible.
Okay. Good. Anything else? What would you value in your room? There's a couple of things that I've thought of that, and certainly it's my room is my room and your room is yours. So there's not a complete right answer here. There's going to be some flexibility, but you guys are all saying really good things. What do you think that? Let me broaden this out just a little bit and be a little creative. What is something that you think you'd want in your room that somebody else might not have at the top of their list?
I think someone, we're naming off really great traits that we want to surround ourselves with as people, but something that comes to my mind is someone I can help. Maybe they don't have a good route to go to, they need to be shown a better path. Maybe they're a lost soul and they're not really all of these traits that we're naming.
Okay.
That's the kind of person I guess I would want to shine my light.
Okay, I love that answer. It's similar to one of mine. So for me, as I'm making my list, I would value someone being in my room. I would want someone in my room who values reciprocity. Okay? Like you have to value reciprocity. What do I mean by that? Well, for me, it means that I want you in my room, not just because I want you in my room, right? Like I don't just want what you can give me. Like I also want to pour into you. Like I want to build an ecosystem within the room where by the time we get done, we're both better. And we're better because we want to be and we're genuinely concerned about, and we've said it in a variety of ways. For me, that's how I express it, that they have to value that reciprocity of the relationship. And And so to value that, to want that person in my room, I have to want to pour into them on some level. And I appreciate that you said that. That if I want grace in my room, I want grace in my room not just because I want grace, but also because I want to pour into grace. That's part of the relationship. Because imagine how the room would look if all these people are only there for me. Yes, sir.
So, I mean, and I agree with you. These are all excellent answers.
Yes.
So my answer is not in opposition to these answers at all.
Okay.
But
Sure.
I want people who are nothing like me in my life. I want people who are going to find their differences and make me better. Like the things that I'm lacking, they have, and the things that they're lacking, I have. And
Yes.
There's a contributing factor in the room that exists because everyone's different. We all need to put something in. So we all get something, but we're all putting in.
Correct. Correct. Yes, sir.
There's a policeman I talked to some time ago down in Florida. He was talking to his son, who's a good athlete, but does some bad things. And he said, son, you're the smartest person in your group, change your group. And the notion is, surround yourself with good people that are different. In my case, I want people that are going to focus on the good that they know I should be, not what I am. And I can trust them to be reliable and tell me when I'm doing something that I'm not supposed to be doing.
Yeah. So I think what I'm hearing a little bit in bits and pieces is how many of you would value a couple people in your room that would challenge you? Okay? Right. So you're asking to be challenged. Okay? But let me ask you this. How does it feel when you're challenged? How many of you like that? It hurts and it's frustrating sometimes. So you have to, the room is not always a happy place, right? But because you value each other and you value reciprocity and you value being challenged and you value accountability, it's okay. Here's what that also means. It also means that there's going to be some times where there's friction in the room, right? It means there's going to be friction within the room. Are you okay with that? Some of us are friction averse. And so you get to make up your own. I'm not telling you how to do that, but be sure that those people understand that about you. Like you can say, I need to be challenged. Now, I have a good friend, a really good friend, and he'll tell you, he said, listen, I'm clueless about this aspect of my life, and I need you to hold me accountable to that. Okay? And so I'll say to him sometimes, hey, Brian, you asked me to do this. He goes, oh yeah, thank you for saying that. Thank you. I need that. It's okay to ask to be challenged in certain aspects. So let me kind of do this. Well, let's see. I went backwards, didn't I? So let's talk about some of the standards for the rest of our time together, and talk about this room that we're going to build. Here's some things that I think are important with some scriptures that kind of go behind them. Certainly this isn't an exhaustive list, and just like any other recipe, you guys can kind of modify it for yourselves. But I do think that there's some neat things that the Bible talks about that are good ingredients for friends and genuine relationships. I think it's good to have someone that's encouraging, right? How many of you need encouragement? Keith? Like as ministers, let me stop for just a second, just one-to-one. As ministers, how often do we need encouraging?
A lot more than people realize.
Yeah. You come to the end of a Sunday, even on a good Sunday, you're just beat.
Well, and this is a true story. Got up one Sunday to preach my guts out. Literally one of those times where you leave it all
Yeah.
there, and you come down sweating.
Mm-hmm.
And had someone come up to me and say, "You used the wrong there in that one slide." And it's like I just gave you blood, sweat, and tears. And that's what you got.
Yeah.
And I don't think people realize how much something like that small will tear a guy down after he's just put his blood on the floor.
Sure.
And so encouragement is a huge deal.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, you don't have to come up and tell me best sermon ever. Be truthful with me. I'd rather you come up and say, hey, you really made me think about that and tell me a great sermon.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's a positive affirmation that happens where you acknowledge the work that's put in, you appreciate it. You don't have to not a very lonely job.
Yeah.
You know, it's a very lonely thing to engage in, and so a little bit goes a long way.
It does. That little bit of encouragement. How many of you guys can think of a time where you weren't sure whether or not you were doing something well and someone encouraged you to do it and you ended up doing better than you thought you would? Right? How many of you have ever been encouraged to stop doing something you were bad at? Yeah, right? No, I'm serious. There are times where you need someone to tell you, listen, I see you doing that, and it's just not where you shine. Right? But what they're doing is they're encouraging you in another area. Like if I came up to Keith and he's preached his guts out, and I go, I appreciate you doing that, but it's just not where. But there are moments where you do have to have that encouragement, right? And I think we all would agree on some level that the people that are going to be in your room need to be encouraging, and people that are going to lift you up and tell you to keep going, whether or not it's something you've done well or whether it's something that you're struggling with. We good with that? I want to lead that one into the next one. Speaking the truth in love. All right? Put these two next to each other because I think it's important for us to encourage each other without giving someone the wrong impression. All right? And here's my illustration. How many of you have seen a friend that was doing something with full gusto, right? Full gusto, but that particular attempt wasn't very good, right? Most of the time we see that with our brothers and sisters because we see them more than anybody else, right? And there's a moment, maybe it's a play or a show, and they get done and they're so excited, and they say, well, what did you think? And you're like, and there are some positive feedback that you want to give to them, right? I want to give you this positive feedback, but now is not the time. Okay? I'm going to give you a little secret code for this. Are you ready? You can say something like, it was really good for me to see you do something you enjoy so much. Right? It was great for me to see you do something that you enjoy so much. And they go, oh. All right? Now later on you can say, hey, listen, have you had a chance to go back and look at that? Yeah, and here's some things what did you feel like you could do better? And now they're going to be in a space where they can talk about that, where right after the show, like Keith was saying, it's not really the greatest time. But the encouragement was, the speaking the truth in love, it was great to see you doing that sort of thing, and encourage them and lift that up. And still be able to speak the truth to them and love it at a later place and go, here's some things that maybe we could work on and tweak. Right? Let me give you a different example. Guys, you're going to want to write this down and take it with you. Okay? Take this with you. You know what I'm going to tell them, don't you?
I don't know what it is, I'm sure.
Write this down and take it with you. If your woman ever comes to you and says, does this outfit make me look fat? Okay? First of all, it's a trap. It's a trap, but I can tell you how to get out of it. Ready? Honey, that outfit doesn't do you justice. It doesn't do you justice. You have another one that I really like to see you in. You didn't say it that she looked fat, okay? But the point is, you can say, that's not the best one. I like it, it's okay. And ladies, don't ever ask a man that question, okay? Don't ever ask a man. It's not fair. You're giving him a a false dichotomy kind of thing. It may be that that's not the most flattering thing, so don't ask it that way. Does this look okay on me? Or should I wear something else? Give him a choice, but don't give him that one. Okay. Point is, there are ways that we can tell people the truth, and we can do it in a loving way, and we can encourage them. And I think that that's an important aspect of the people that we gather close to us. That yes, they'll be encouraging, and yes, they'll tell us the truth, and yes, they'll do it because they love us, but they're not consistently looking for a way to tell us down. Okay, if you want to know whether or not you look fat in something, go ask your girlfriend. Don't ask your man. Okay, because she'll tell you honest and you'll receive it from her. You won't receive it from your guy. Okay, let me go to the next one before I get in trouble there. I think, and this is just me, this is one of the things that I want to add to my room. I think you ought to have a sense of humor. Okay? The Bible says a merry heart does good like a what? Like a medicine. And I want people in my room that have a sense of humor. I do. I want to laugh. Jerry Clower is an old country comedian, and he says, listen, I don't know about any of you guys, but I can think of only one place where nobody's laughing, and that's hell. And I have made arrangements to miss hell. And I always want to be somewhere where there's joy and laughter. And I like that. And so for me, the people that I think I want in my room and that I would encourage you to have in your room is that they need to have a sense of humor. Okay? Now, why would you think that it's important for someone to have a sense of humor? And why would that be a scriptural thing to have? Why did you need to have someone with you that has a sense of humor? Hold on, Keith. Yes.
Because it's important for them to it's important for you to know that they want to be around you, laugh, big things that you guys bond with each other with.
Okay, there's a certain amount of chemistry building that happens when things are funny. Yep, go ahead.
Being a Christian is an optimistic and a happy thing. And if I'm surrounding myself with people who are constantly, depressed or down, it's not really the right mindset for a Christian to have.
Sure. To have that merry heart. Yes, sir.
I think sometimes these last two go hand in hand, where having a sense of humor allows you to speak truth to somebody.
Mhm.
It's more disarming in thought rather than having to break them down.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that there's something to be said for being somber. Don't get me wrong. But there is something about that chemistry that's built, that merry heart of a Christian that says, you know what? We also need to have, to me, with a sense of humor comes grace, right? Because we've all stumbled. We've all had something that was just silly, and you're like, oh man, you laughed and milk came out of your nose or whatever it was, right? Like there's always those funny moments. I think that there's I even think there's funny statements in the Bible. And one that I think is hilarious that I don't know that anybody else does is when Moses is talking back to God. You remember that scene, and God wants him to go be a representative of Pharaoh, and he says, what's in your hand? And he goes, oh, it's my staff. And he goes, well, just take it and throw it down. Well, I don't imagine that he chunked it a long way off. It's always been a piece of wood. He just kind of dropped it right there. And what does God do to it? Do you remember? Turns it into a what? A snake. And the Bible just says, and Moses fled from it. Can you imagine that? I think that that's a funny thing that God and Moses will laugh about later on. Nobody else is there, and God's going, hey man, remember that time I turned that into a snake? You laughed? I got you then, didn't I? Yeah, I got you. That was pretty funny. And Moses will be like, yeah, that's not funny. You laugh at that, but I think that there are neat moments like that, yeah? You read in the book of Acts where, they're casting out demons. There's this one guy that's casting out demons in the name of Paul's Jesus, right? Do you remember that story? It's kind of obscure. And the demons are like, wait a minute. We've heard of Jesus and we've heard of Paul, but who are you? And the demons jump on him. And then they kind of, he runs around crazy. And I'm like, that's funny. Like what business do you have showing off? You found out what happens. I say that just to say this. I think that sometimes in our Christian lives, we don't smile nearly enough, right? I think sometimes we're overly hard on one another and don't give each other enough grace. And the people that I want in my room need to have merry hearts and be able to laugh. That's me. And I think that that's totally biblical. I think that's totally biblical. And I would encourage you to consider that with the people that you're going to let into your room as well. We've talked about this a little bit, thinking of others. I think that that's really important, to value more others as more important than yourselves. Paul writes about in Philippians. What does that look like? In your life, has anyone ever shown you that they're more important, that you are more important than them? And show me what that looks like. Yes, ma'am. Yes. Yeah. I think that's someone who's not, I'll put it this way. I don't want to be overly judgmental. I think that there are some times where people will do that in an effort to identify with you, that they want to let you know, I've been there. And they lose sight of the fact that they're not there right now, you are, and you need help. And so they have a hard time bringing that back around. And so there's a little bit of grace we need to give them, but in that moment, you're not looking to give them grace, you're the one that needs that grace. And so we can lose sight of that. Not just they, but we. I've done that before, if I'm being honest. What does it look like, though, when you value somebody else more? Or when someone has valued you more? Yes?
I feel like there's an element of self-sacrifice to it, like when the other person's like willing to make sacrifices to like be there for you, to like, support you.
Yeah, that self-sacrifice. I go ahead.
I was just gonna say, when you're on your, a good example would be like when you're on your last dollar, somebody else comes in and you give it to them, and I don't know where my next dollar is gonna come from, but I know they need it just as much, if not more than I do in this moment. I know that if the roles were reversed, I would need that extra dollar, whatever, and I'm sure it's not just one dollar, but
Sure.
the amount of dollars needed, I know that that's happened to me, and I know that I consider that also been
Yeah.
that brother.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just, they need it, and I'm going to give it to them. Sure. One of the things with my boys is they were getting older, and the young ladies started coming into the picture. I'm like, look, here's what I want to tell you. I'm not paying for your girlfriends. Okay? I'm not. You're not getting any money from me to go out on a date, and here's why. Number one, she's not my girlfriend. I'm still trying to pay for the one that I got 26 years ago. So okay, that's number one. Number two, though, if she's not worth you going out and getting a job, then that's not your woman, right? If she's not worth you going and putting out some effort to spend time with her and effort and show her that, then you need to go on somewhere else, okay? But the second thing is, if she doesn't understand that you're going out to work so that you can be with her, then that's not your woman either, okay? If she doesn't value the effort that you're putting into that relationship to pay for things, to be with her, just get that time to be with her, that's not your woman. Now, the same thing I think is true in all relationships as you get there, that you don't need to ask somebody else to pay for your relationship, right? You need to have your own effort into the relationship, and that's what this is. It's thinking of others, even if it's something as simple as a thank you. Like, I'm going to say this. You guys, and myself included, have no idea all of the effort and the exhaustion that Michael Bob has been through to make sure that you have this today. You have no idea, okay? Take a minute. He's in your room today. Just say thank you. Aunt Bonnie's been here. Several of the other ones have been here. But the people that have gone through the effort, and here's the thing. All they want you to do is hear about Jesus. They just want you to hear about Jesus. And they want you to be around other people that love him. And they'll go through the effort to put anything together that they can do to get you in that space. Okay? Think of other people. Think of other people. Let me go on to the next one. I've only got 5 minutes. We talked about loyalty a while ago. We talked about the one that sticks closer than a brother, right? Talk to me about what loyalty means. If I'm going to have somebody in my room, what does it mean? Keith, I waved you off a minute ago, but I'd love to hear what you think about loyalty.
So, I know it's a used phrase.
Okay.
Almost too used at this point, that it almost doesn't have its meaning, but if you really think about it, it does. My ride or die.
Yep.
It's the person that I call at 4 in the morning for whatever. And there's no,
Yeah.
Someone who is committed to the relationship to wherever that ends up. You know, that you can confess anything to.
Mhm.
You know, James 5:16 says, confess your sins one
Yeah.
to another. You can pray for one another. Well, I think that's not limited to sins only, but temptation, which I'm going to talk about later.
Sure.
You know, that I can call you and say, oh, I'm struggling with this. And you can talk me down off the ledge, you know. And that I know you're not going to take that information and go share it with somebody.
Yeah.
That's between you and I, that's loyalty. And then you're gonna call me tomorrow and say, hey dude, you okay?
Yeah.
Did you make it? You know, do I need to come down there and beat you? I mean, whatever it requires, you're in for it. And so for me, loyalty is the biggest thing in my room. That everyone there is committed to that. No matter what else they got going on, they're all committed to that.
Yeah, I like the way you said that, and I'm going to rephrase it just a little bit. That if you're going to come in this room, you have to make the commitment to stay in. Like, even if there was an exit, you wouldn't leave. Even if there was an exit, you wouldn't go anyway. It's kind of like that moment that Jesus has with the disciples in John, where he says, are you guys going to go too? And he goes, where would we go? Right? Where would we go? That loyalty is really important. I'm gonna have to keep my feet moving. We talked about someone that seeks peace, right? That's not always looking to pick a fight with you. I think that's important. Listen, I'm all about having a sense of humor, and I'm all about having fun, and I love to pick at people. But I will tell you that I cross the line sometimes that I go too far. Okay? I have had to learn to reel that in, but also in the moments where I've gone too far in picking, to be able to say, I'm really sorry, that wasn't my intent. I meant to pick at you, but I did not meant to hurt you, right? And we have to learn that border, and you're going to have to learn that border too. And that the other side of that is to be gracious and merciful with other people. How many of you have heard of Hanlon's razor? Hanlon's razor. It's a saying that it's easier to assign malice than it is ignorance. Okay. In other words, it's easy for you to say to someone, well, you did that on purpose, right? Well, maybe, but more likely is that they were just stupid. And I say stupid. It may be that they just didn't know better, or they hadn't learned, or they didn't realize what was going on in your life at the moment. How many of you have ever been in a bad mood or had a bad day, and then someone comes up to you and they want to pick and play, and you're like, I'm not in the mood for it, and then you kind of overreact, right? So what I'm telling you is, you also need to seek peace with that person and to say to them, they're ready to play and you're not, right? Or maybe when you've reacted, to say, you know what, I need to be at peace here. The Bible tells us to seek peace with all men. In Matthew chapter 5 and verse 23 and 24, he even says, listen, before you go to the altar with your gift, if you're upset with your brother, you go make that right first, right? You got to make that right first. And there are going to be moments, the married folks in here can tell you, where you will be cross with your spouse all the way to church and get there and go, hey, how y'all doing? And then get back in the car afterward. Right back. Okay? That never happened to Eric, but he's seen it happen to people before, right? The people in my room need to at least be people that will seek peace and be gracious to one another. I think that's important for you to know. That doesn't mean you'll never argue, but it does mean that we can get our wits about us, that we trust the best efforts of the other person to do what's right. Last one I'm going to say is this, is that the other person keeps you sharp, right? As iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. I learned this. I used to work in a kitchen. How many of you have ever seen them take those knives and do that sort of thing? Okay, so that's iron sharpening iron. And what happens is they use the edges to push the dents out. Okay? That's different from going against a whetstone where they grind it. So you've seen some of those. So when you go up against a whetstone, they're shaving pieces off, right? But iron sharpens iron, what they're doing is they're pushing it back into place. It's a different process. For me, as the old preacher in me comes out and goes, okay, well, when I go up against Jesus, I'm grinding things off. When I go up to my friend, he's helping push me back into place. Okay, there's a sermon illustration for you. You probably knew that already. Yeah. But my point is just to say to you this, that I think that as we've talked about loyalty and we've talked about a sense of humor and speaking the truth in love, that there is this point where, listen, I've noticed that this part is, you've been dented, like the world has dented you. That maybe you've lost a flame or a fire or something that you really had before, or I noticed that your countenance is not up the way it used to be. Talk to me about what's going on. Let's see if we can push that back into place. It's not always challenging. Sometimes it's sitting down with someone in that comfortable moment and saying, hey, how do we get this back to where you were? And God constantly calls his people back to that. Did my mic cut off? I was like, I know I'm close on time, but don't cut my mic. The Bible, return to that first love kind of thing. The people in my room keep us sharp and help push me. Hey, did you know this? Hey, what about that? And they challenge me to do bigger and better things. So that's what I've got. Just kind of a closing encouragement. When it comes to your room, if you're the first person in there, whatever standards you put in there, you've got to be those things first. Okay? And I'm going to say it, you have to strive for those things first. I think we talked about mercy enough. And get comfortable with the fact that not everybody makes it into your room. The metaphor that I took away from Ivan Meissner is I love his metaphor, but I at least want a window so that I can wave at the people that aren't in there. I don't want to be ugly to them, right? I'm going to wave at those people, and they can come and knock, and we can pass notes, but the people that are in my room are in my room. And then I think if nothing else, you need to make room for the Lord in your life. If nobody else makes it in there, you need God in your life. And I don't know where any of you are at. Some of you may be here because this is what you really want to do. Some of you may be here because your mom or dad has made you be here, whatever. I really want to encourage you to get the Lord in your room, get the Lord in your life, and keep him there. Keep him there. You're going to argue with him. He usually wins. In fact, he always wins. Okay? But get the Lord in your life and keep him there. And then everything else will make a whole lot more sense. I'm done with all the material that I have. Do you guys have any kind of closing questions or comments or anything you want to add? No? Okay. Well, let's end with a prayer this time together, and then I'll let Uncle Bob speak to you. Our Father, we're thankful for the moment that you let us be together. It was short, but it was purposeful, and we appreciate that. Thank you so much for Jesus and the fact that he died on the cross. He came to our world, and he died on the cross, and he is inviting us to be in his room eternally. He's inviting us to be with you eternally. And help us to realize that there are standards, that there are things that we need to do to be led into that room. And for the places that we don't, for the times that we fall short, we're so thankful for your grace and mercy and forgiveness. We don't want to have to use it, but we know that your grace and mercy is there and it flows freely from the cross for us. Thank you so much for loving us and inviting us to that space. Our dear God, help us to live and walk in a manner worthy of the calling with which we have been called. Help us to encourage one another. Help us to be friendly. Help us to have a sense of humor. Help us to be dedicated to one another. And help us to walk hand in hand through the gates into that space with you. We're excited for what's next. We pray for our brother Keith that will be speaking to us later today and for the time that we'll have together tomorrow. But immediately we're thankful for what you've given to us today. It's in Jesus we pray, and all God's people said, amen. Uncle Bob?